Webinar, perfect. All right, so the webinar is started. Let's hope that Hunter can join as a panelist. Let's hope people show up and that I don't have to do anything else in order to. Is a touch worrying that there's nobody waiting to come in. That's weird.
If it's only SJSU, most of them show up a few minutes late.
Oh, perfect. Okay, that's good to know. That makes me actually, that does actually make me feel much better.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like we have somebody. Hello, welcome. We are right now trying to figure out my bosses. People are inbound. I love it. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I am using my boss's Zoom because I don't have access to webinars, and so I'm trying to figure out on the fly how we use webinars. But that's going to be great. Perfect. Chelsea, forgive me because I actually don't know. How do you pronounce your last name?
Criez. The Z is silent.
Criez. Excellent. Very cool. Oh man, teachers must have had a field day with like creative, right? Like that. Did that always
Oh,
happen?
my mom calls us her creations.
Amazing. Amazing. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay. Got more people joining. I'm a little worried about Hunter. Hunter doesn't seem like he's able to join at the moment. This is being recorded. Yes, good question. Thank you very much. Um, bum, 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 bum. Yeah, theoretically it asked you if if you were okay with it being recorded, or at least informed you that this was being recorded. But I will be able to sort of cut down the recording so that all of this intro and while we're waiting for people to arrive doesn't get included, and we can pass this along to anybody who can be here or who needs the link after the fact. I am waiting on one more panelist who will be presenting towards the end, but he doesn't seem to be able to join at the moment. So let me take a quick timeout. Hunter did say he's in, but it's not showing
I
his
see him
face.
as an attendee, not as a
Ah,
panelist.
there it is. Okay. We're going to promote him to panelist, which is not something I knew that I could do. Error code 3041. If only I knew 3041 meant. Hey, Hunter, I'm going to resend you the invitation to be a host, and I'm also going to invite you as a panelist, and we'll see if that works out. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your patience. I'm John Kazarowski. I work with all. Oh, and he was able to join. Look at that. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, we'll wait just a little bit longer because I know we've got a little bit of a we've got a longer list of people who wanted to attend than are here at the moment. And so I will give it just a little bit more time, but I'm going to share my screen really quickly so that you can see what it is that we're doing here. Like I said, we'll just wait for a little bit longer for more of our friends to get here. But thank you so much for joining. Thank you for coming. If you want, in the chat, we'll sort of be monitoring it as we go, both Hunter and myself. But if you want to in the chat, sort of introduce yourself and what department or in what capacity you are at SJSU, and we're happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Like I said, I'm going to wait just a little bit longer to get some people in, because I know we had a bunch of people RSVP who haven't been able to join yet. And for those of you who got here just a touch after I mentioned this, but this will be recorded, so we do have the ability to pass this on to somebody if they can't attend. Okay. Thank you, Robert. Appreciate you. Thank you for being here. Should have had some music playing. This would have been a nice little relaxing time for us. But thank you, Graham, for introducing yourself. I like it. And I'm hoping that we've got a wide swath of subject areas. It's always a lot more fun when we can sort of share in that regard as well, across disciplines. We'll get to this in a moment, but I've worked in a number of different departments in a bunch of different capabilities across my time before Packback and with Packback, and so it's always fun to get to reach across departmental lines, because sometimes your buildings are, pretty far away from one another, and or your time is extraordinarily limited. Yeah. All right. Well, we are 6 minutes after, and I do want to be mindful of the people's time who are here right now. So I'm actually going to get this started. And like I said, we're recording it, and I'll be able to edit down the recording so that we can start right here as we do. But I do want to introduce myself and the other two panelists. My name is John Kezarowski. I work with professors on SJSU's campus in basically an instructional design sort of capability within the scope of Packback and the Packback platform, which you're here to learn about today. I'm also joined by Hunter Dively and Chelsea Criez, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Yeah, I'll introduce myself. So I pretty much work with John here at Packback, and my big role is also, we're a team. We're kind of two peas in a pod. So my primary role is to introduce folks to Packback, especially to folks that haven't learned about it or have seen it in action before, and build more of a custom plan for each classroom. It was barely a year ago that I introduced myself to Chelsea. And was like, hey, have you heard of Packback? And here we are now. And so that's primarily my role. And then when faculty decide to join up on our team, John and I come in hand and work with them before, after, and before, during, and after the school year. So super excited to be here as well.
And I'm Chelsea. I work for the English and Comparative Literature department, and I teach first year writing. I teach the stretch program and 1A and 1B at 2, all the first year writing classes at SJSU.
And Chelsea is one of our rock star users of Packback, and you'll get to see a little bit about how she implements Packback into her classes. But thank you both. I'm going to do some talking, and then I'm going to shoot it back and forth with Chelsea, and then Hunter's going to sort of present the tool. But I do want to start off with kind of how we got here, the reason why many of us are here. And it's because something big happened in November, December of 2022. And that is that an iteration of ChatGPT was released to the public, no longer in beta form, and the number of users reached the 1 million mark within weeks. For comparative purposes, the number of users on Facebook took years to reach 1 million, and ChatGPT took weeks. And so what happened? Everybody had a totally calm and measured response to it. Oop, I got to click more. The college essay is dead. I was terrified. Everybody's going to cheat. We're weighing in on how to manage, and I feel abject terror. Now, validating all of these experiences as legitimate. There was a lot of we don't know what we don't know about this, and an awful lot of kind of, is this the end of things as we know them? Whether the college essay is dead or we're all going to be replaced on the other end of the spectrum by artificial intelligence at some point. And there were also a lot of very positive reactions from people who work at companies like Hunter and I do. There's a vast range of sort of reactions to this, to ChatGPT, to Claude, to Cactus, to Mr. Reindeer, to any other litany of the other ones that have come out since ChatGPT published their code open source. And so I would love to hear, as I'm going to pop it over to Chelsea, to hear about sort of what her reaction was. I'd actually love it if anybody who's willing to in the chat, there's no judgment. Was your reaction positive, negative, neutral? The sky is falling. Any of these things? Was it, what's ChatGPT? What are all of these? A 1 to 3 word reaction of like your pure reaction to when ChatGPT sort of hit the mainstream or when you found out about it. And Chelsea, I'll pop over to you while people are maybe posting their thoughts in the chat.
Yeah. So my first response was, I was terrified. I thought I chose my entire career that is about to be replaced by an AI system. Because I teach first year writing. I teach students how to write essays, and now they can type in a prompt and get an entire essay. What am I going to do? And so when it first came out, I was absolutely terrified of AI.
Yeah, that's and honestly, that was quite the popular reaction, was being terrified and just sort of not knowing what we don't know. I like curious. I like quite amazing. What's about to change? I love all of these thoughts, and it's because sort of Hunter and I we had the benefit of working for an AI tech company at the time when ChatGPT was released into the wild, and we were already, truthfully, implementing some of the same types of coding, and we were excited that OpenAI published their code because we were able to embrace that side of things and also continue to work with what we're doing on our side of things, which is which is not generative AI, it is instructional AI. And that brings me to my next slide, which is, what the heck is ChatGPT anyway? ChatGPT is what's called a large language model, and you've experienced large language models on a small language model scale within the assumptive text in your phones. So if you have a smartphone in any regard and you've ever been typing a text message and 3 little words pop up or a couple different word choices pop up as your next potential word, that's a language model predictor. It's just a statistical tool, to be honest. It doesn't think per se, but it gets fed a whole bunch of text, and then the model calculates what comes next in that based on statistical probability. Now, you've taught the AI on your phone, but the internet, and almost in its entirety, from what I understand, taught ChatGPT. So I would love it if you could predict in the chat right now what the word in this sentence, "not all heroes wear," what is the most likely probability or probable word that comes next in that sentence? Not all heroes wear. Badges. I've heard that one. Capes. Not all heroes wear badges. Not all heroes wear uniforms. I've heard not all heroes wear capes. Is, in fact, the highest likelihood. Pants is a little bit more likely than I would have guessed. Pajamas comes in at 0.01%. And so this is just statistical probabilities. And so when this series of words comes in together, the highest likelihood, the highest probability is capes at 80%. And really, we just participated in a live large language model experience. We were the predictors of the next text, but that's really what ChatGPT does, and that's what a generative AI, at least in this capability, ChatGPT, Claude, Cactus, this is what they do. They take related information using keywords. They take a look at all of the related material that they've been fed or that they've read or that they've ingested to be able to predict, and takes that content area and predicts. So that is what generative AI is. Now, Packback is instructional AI, and we'll get into what that means right now. So we have what's called a digital TA. It is our AI. Now we are instructional, and ours gives instant writing feedback. So whether that's discourse in the form of replacing sort of your static discussion boards on Canvas with something that is active and that coaches students through the process, not only of the writing of the discussion, but also of including rich materials that encourage discussion back and forth. That's not, yes, I agree, good job. Which, as somebody who taught a class of 700 students at one point, all asynchronously online, much of the course that I inherited was pre-made for me, and they were static discussion boards. So you can imagine how much fun it was to grade static discussion boards for 700 students and see that all of the replies were very good, I agree. This encourages a robust discussion, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get later into this. And one of the things that I want to point out too is that because ChatGPT and similar tools are large language model predictors, they're really missing out on three specific things that are really high limitations that seem to be the most crucial to academic progress, not only for students, but for all of us as we move forward and as we move into this new sort of generation of what education looks like. The three limitations specifically are context. ChatGPT is bad at context. So if you've noticed, if you've ever had a student turn in something that was AI generated, it kind of gets a little bit general. It doesn't do really well with specificity. That's the next thing. And it also cannot give you really good or clear parameters. If you say, like, I want to study everything that happened before 1920. Can you tell me what happened before 1920? Sometimes it misses some things. Sometimes it goes too far back. Sometimes it goes too far forward. The big thing, though, that we want to focus on is it eliminates voice. Student voice, researcher positionality, these are things that are going to become increasingly more important as we move towards sort of a future where maybe not all of what we do or what we write or what we say we can fully count on won't be generated by AI. So we have gone in the other direction with our AI. Our discussion is inquiry-based. We like students to ask the questions, and we like them to get the coaching to be able to focus in and really demonstrate content knowledge, but also invite in content-specific knowledge from their fellow students because they've been assisted to say exactly what they mean as clearly as they want to, and getting that coaching as we go. We've done the same thing with essays and long-form writing assignments, and again, I'll let Hunter get to some of this later. But part of what is important to me, and just to give a little bit of a context as to why this is so important to me, I come from a sport management background, at least in my academic pursuits. My master's thesis was on barriers to help-seeking behaviors within athletes. And part of, and I'll spare you sort of all of the in the weeds, but part of what I was studying was how do systems interact with athletes specifically on things like asking for academic assistance or physical assistance, or even something like going in and maybe visiting a career center or choosing a major or choosing an academic advisor. Would they rather keep it within the athletics? And how does that change what their perception of life outside of athletics does to them? And so for me, one of the big major findings that's consistent with a lot of research in that area is that if someone has to ask for help, they often don't. And one of the things that I love is that this is live real-time feedback that a student doesn't have to say, I don't understand something, I don't know something. It's just coaching that's right there for them. And again, I don't want to pontificate too much about why that matters, because we are going to get into that a little bit more as we talk about SJSU specifically. But I love, and have loved since I was a professor using Packback. I found Packback 4 years ago as a professor, and I now work here and have for 15 months, and I just am so thrilled. I'm still adjuncting, still using the tool and finding new things every time I teach a class. So next, I sort of want to take a look, and I'll actually bounce this over to Hunter really quickly, because I know Hunter, these stats are very, very important to what Hunter and I do, because we have, in addition to Chelsea being a resource here, we have a bunch of other professors who are using Packback, but we don't buy or sell data, and so this is how we get this knowledge into the hands of other professors, is by having great experiences with our current users. And so, Hunter, if you want to just chat for a second really quickly about SJSU specifically, I'll let you take the lead on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been here at Packback for 2 years now, and I've been working with San Jose since I joined Packback. And so just being able to familiarize myself with more and more faculty, and wanted to share just a couple points about what John was saying. After ChatGPT launched, I'm sure you've seen in the news and your email every single week, there's a new AI tool coming out, and a new writing platform, or new this and new that. And everything, all the things that those are missing that Packback does have is that we've been able to scale support for university, here at San Jose and abroad. What does that mean? We built a foundation since Packback was created in 2018 to support faculty all over the country in Canada. And so here at San Jose, with the help of Jennifer Red and her awesome team, we're integrated within Canvas. We're accessible for all students, working with Kevin and Emma over at the bookstore through the First Day Access program. And of course, we're ADA compliance that gets audited annually. So we want to make sure that we're equitably accessible for all students that are coming from all different backgrounds to San Jose's campus. Annually, we used with around 6,000 students, and then over, throughout the 2022 and into the 2023 semesters, you can see that 20 plus San Jose instructors have used Packback and continue to use it. And as John mentioned, we were chatting a little bit about departments earlier, anywhere from classes like Chelsea's that are more English based, STEM courses, business, marketing, information systems, and so forth. And then talking a little bit about our presence just here in California. Over 100,000 Californian students have been able to have access to Packback and used it within their classes. 800 plus instructors have used it as well since we launched. And so those are some really big numbers to share, but just showing that the presence is felt and heard within the higher ed system. And that doesn't even touch the K-12 schools that we work with that are a little bit out of John and I's league, since we focus more on higher ed.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Hunter. I did notice that there was a question in the chat, and I want to address it, but I want to address it very briefly because I know Hunter's going to get into it when he starts demoing the platform and gets into sort of the nuts and bolts of this. But how does Packback teach grammar or assist students to get better in correct grammar as a digital assistant? So this happens as the students are writing, and it gives live real-time feedback in written form on a separate panel as the students are typing, that they can see populate as they type. And so that's the very quick answer, and I'll let Hunter go a little bit more in depth. But it does have to do with a bunch of different algorithms that process all the student writing. And that is, again, something that Hunter's going to get to. But great question, and I very much appreciate it. And absolutely, feel free to pop questions in the chat, and I'll try to address them either in text or as I'm speaking, as I see them. So thank you for that, Elsie. All right. My mouse working again here. So I want to briefly talk about outcomes because again, we've got a whole bunch of this data, but I want to be mindful of time and I want to just give an introduction. But we do have a few white papers that show some data that we've been collecting from either student report or also just some of the data that we collect internally based on the student writing and student scores and feedback and such. But one of the things I wanted to mention, as I said, one of the biggest obstacles and barriers to help-seeking behaviors is the notion that you have to admit that you need help. That's also one of the biggest impetuses for students deciding to cheat, is feeling four different ways that I like to call the four uns. They feel uncertain, unsupported, unprepared, or unqualified. And part of what loops through all of these things is confidence, and feeling like you have the ability to actually communicate your content knowledge. There was nothing more upsetting to me as a student when I was an undergrad and even through grad school. Nothing was more upsetting to me than feeling like I knew something, getting to a test or getting to a writing assignment or getting to anything and feeling like I took the test, took the writing assignment, did the paper, any of those things, getting back a grade where I was like, but I knew it. I just couldn't communicate it, or I didn't communicate it well enough, or I didn't have the right approach, or I wasn't organized enough, and so I confused my own points. What we're seeing, and this is baseline data, and we have a whole bunch more, and Hunter, I know, put some in the chat. It's a confidence booster that students, when they turn in their assignment, they feel like they have a pretty good idea of what the grade they're going to get is. They also feel confident that what they're expressing is in fact what they know, and they feel like they've got the support to be able to communicate that very clearly. And again, put pins in some of these things that I'm saying because Hunter's gonna come back to them, but I noticed right away with my students I taught a learning theories course this past spring, and I got to use the entire bundle finally, the Packback bundle. Again, Hunter will talk about that, but I got them to be able to use discourse in the classroom, and I was able to bring in polling, and I was able to bring in these deep dives assignments, and every time I would receive an assignment, it felt like it was the third or fourth draft. I wasn't giving feedback, static feedback that I hoped and wished and prayed that my students would read before the next time they had to turn something in, like I had been used to doing in the past. I noticed that I was getting much better quality writing and students feeling much more comfortable and confident in placing themselves in positions to succeed and giving these really well developed and crafted essays. But I do want to open it up to Chelsea for a second there, because I know, Chelsea, you've experienced some changes in outcomes, and if there's something you want to mention about maybe something you've noticed since you started using Packback or since you started incorporating AI, because I know that there's some fun little things hidden in the way that you use AI. If you want to talk about that and maybe the differences and the changes that you've seen since sort of embracing AI in the classroom, and well, I'll let you go.
Sure. So it's still pretty early on in the semester, so we're really only using AI to kind of get started with writing. But I have noticed that the topics that students are using for their writing are much more narrow than what they have been before. So instead of writing about global warming, they're writing about a specific aspect of global warming. So they're able to use instructive AI to narrow down their focus. And then I've also noticed that with the questions, the curiosity questions that are on Packback, my students are starting to ask better questions where the questions aren't so easy to answer, or they're starting to connect ideas outside of class to what we're learning. And their responses are deeper and more thoughtful. And even though we've only had 3 or 4 questions at this point, I'm already seeing a difference in their thought processes and the way that they're interacting with the material we're covering, which is fantastic at this early on in the semester.
Excellent. Sorry, I had to unbury mute on that one, but that's really great to hear. And Chelsea and Hunter and I work together to make sure that we're seeing these very cool outcomes, and these really sort of reinforcing of the fact that AI doesn't have to be scary in the classroom, and it also doesn't have to be necessarily something that, well, I don't even want to say that. I want to say it probably is going to have to be something that we address in the classroom, because this is OpenAI's working paper that they're developing right now, where they were looking at some of the trends in how people are using ChatGPT, and collecting some user data, and figuring out who uses ChatGPT for what, and large language models and how they're being implemented. And it looks like to them, based on their projections and based on what they've been taking a look at, and you see that this is from relatively recently that this was put out. About 80% of the US workforce could have at least 10% of their work tasks affected by the introduction of LLMs, while approximately 19% of workers may see at least 50% of their tasks impacted. Now, impact does not have to be bad. It does not mean it is something to be afraid of. It just means that these are going to be useful and relevant to most of our students as we continue to move forward, and probably even more so. And there we do have, I have the link to this article at some point too, so maybe we can, while Hunter's talking, I'll dig that up and pop it in the chat. But I thought this was an interesting slide to sort of put out there right before we get into what Packback is doing, because we do have, a couple of differing, I guess, ideas about what what AI can and should be doing in any given classroom. Hang on one second. There's that data summary. So this is what I was actually trying to click through to take a look at. These are just some interesting statistics about AI in the classroom. And again, this is from July of this year. And so this doesn't include courses that are currently going on where maybe we've got a growing number of students here. And so this just sort of tells you that students are active and engaged and curious about AI, as are professors, as are all of us, waiting sort of with bated breath on how to figure out how to use all of this. And so one of the things that I really love about the ability to use AI in the classroom and to have it help you in doing what you're already doing is, I believe, Packback, and I've seen it change behavioral outcomes in addition to, I guess, academic score outcomes or content-based outcomes. I'm seeing an ability for students to craft positive behaviors and attitudes towards placing themselves and positioning themselves in the middle of the knowledge that they're acquiring, as opposed to, this is information I have to download into my brain and then use in my future career, really allowing them to see themselves as part of the conversation and part of the new practitioner base of whatever their chosen field is. So I do want to pop it over to Chelsea one more time before we get into what Packback is and does. I'm going to leave these up so that you can sort of take a look at why we did what we did and why we began to design AI the way that we're using it. But I know that Chelsea's got a few really, really cool and creative ways that she's already using Packback in her classroom, and I'll let that be the bridge over into Hunter presenting the platform. And Chelsea's also got some really cool ideas that she's using in conjunction with Packback that are very, very exciting and innovative. And so I'll let her take the stage one more time. And I appreciate y'all going with me this far. I'll be popping in and out and chiming in here and there, but I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea right now, and then we'll pop it over to Hunter.
So one of the things that we have to consider with generative AI is that we should be more proactive with it than reactive. So the way that I am being proactive is designing assignments that students will find relevant or interesting, and then they can use instructional AI to help them with their confidence. But the most recent assignment I did with my Stretch English course is to have them play around with genre and form, where they are writing the genre of a literacy narrative, but they're writing it in the form of a Google Maps. So they have two parts of the assignment where they create a map where they choose locations that represent their growth through their literacy journey. And they also have a written component where they give an overview of the map, where they explain how they develop their literacy, what their definition of literacy is, and how those locations helped get to where they are now. And I had them use the different tabs that are available on the deep dive, where they would write their essay in the draft tab. And then on the works cited tab, they would put a link, a shareable link to the map. And on this next assignment that I'm going to give them, they're going to be writing the genre of a personal essay, but they're going to write it in the form of a photo essay. So I'll have them do the same thing where they write their written portion in the draft tab and then put a shareable link to their photo essay on the works cited tab. And I had them present their literacy maps, and it was so easy to display their maps, going through all of their submissions, clicking on the submission, then going to their works cited, clicking on the link. It made it so easy to just transition between all of the student presentations. So there really wasn't any hold up in between presentations, and it made it really seamless. And so now I'm trying to kind of squeeze time in so that we can present the other projects too, because it was so great to see their work. So I'm hoping to be able to do that again.
I love that. Thank you so much. And again, what you're hearing is more so than ever student voice and student positionality and researcher positionality, because this extends up to all of us as well. It really does get to the core that the thing that AI can't do is be a part of the conversation, is to create new things, to be an actively shaping member of the community of whether it's the body of researchers or the body of practitioners. That's sort of the thing that's missing here. And that's where we at Packback hope to help you to engender the next student, the next series of colleagues, frankly, and practitioners in your given fields. And so I'm going to turn this over to Hunter. Hunter, you said you wanted the next slide, correct?
Yeah, and this is actually a great leeway into talking about student voice. And so before we even hop into Packback, John, if you want to go into that next slide as well, walking through a little bit more data. I know we've thrown a lot of data at you, but this is probably one of my favorite pieces of data to show that we're really proud of as a company. And I know here at San Jose, y'all pride yourselves on bringing in first gen students of just a diverse background that really makes San Jose State what it is today. And so based on some of the research we've been able to conduct, this was an independent study done by Ivy Tech Community College in Indiana. So about 20 community colleges or so. And we found that students that were historically underrepresented in higher ed based on their demographic were getting more A's and B's in their classes using Packback compared to those that weren't. And then what does that result in? It means less DFWs for those underrepresented demographics, which typically are also first gen students. And so that's just something that we're really proud about. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and talk a little bit more about how we help students of all backgrounds develop their voice in the classroom and help build their confidence up within their writing and work. And of course, I also understand, as a first gen student, that it is difficult to start classes and be the first one in your, household to go to college. And so I know that having Packback by my side to just help me learn some things that I may have not gotten from my public schooling education really put me above, in terms of the classroom and performance. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll hop into talking about what Packback actually looks like when you first open it up through Canvas. And so we're launched through Canvas. What that means is you don't have to download a specific application or anything like that. Students can open it up on their laptops, computers, iPads, and so forth. And so Packback's going to design to look pretty familiar to what you're going to see, what a student sees in Canvas already. We break it down by assignment modules. That's what our discussions look like. And so this is one of Chelsea's first year writing classes. And what she does is she sets up specific themes that she wants students to talk about each week. You know, maybe some weeks are really directly tied into that theme of the week in the syllabus. And so it's going to, you know, talk about why do we study liberal arts, maybe hidden intellectualism, and so forth. And so as a student, I can see what is due each week. I've got one Packback assignment that's due. And so what the Packback assignments look like is, one, it's going to involve students asking open-ended questions compared to what John pointed out a little earlier of that busy work style discussion post where, you know, you just give your student a quick prompt, they answer it with 1 or 2 sentences. You know, even if you're here on San Jose and you're like some of the professors we work with teach 4 sections of 30 students, you can't really go in and monitor every single post every single week, unless we had more than 24 hours in a day. And last time I checked, unfortunately, we don't. Sometimes I wish we did. But what we do instead is we're going to use AI to coach students to have more of an active style discussion. And what this is it's based on inquiry-based discussion and Bloom's taxonomy of higher learning and just really intrinsic motivation of getting students to have that desire to learn. And so what these students look like, and by the way, this is San Jose classroom. It's a different English class that we work with. So these are San Jose students actually writing in Packback. We are FERPA compliant, so I can't show you student names, but let's just talk about the meat and potatoes of like what makes up a really great Packback question. You know, these students are going to take some of those guiding prompts that Chelsea provides. Maybe she brings it up in class of what she expects students to do each week. And when what those students are going to do is they're going to go in and create an open-ended question about what they're learning in class, maybe what are some substantive materials that they're reading, and other conversations that are going on in class. Next, they're going to add context down in the middle. This is more about why did I, the student, ask this question? What do I want to further understand? Here's some research that I conducted and some of the research results, as well as sharing my own feelings and perspectives. And then, of course, sharing a source with the class. Now, I'm sure most of you in here have probably utilized discussion boards in the past. So just think, you know, back to comparing discussion board posts in your classes before to what we see on the screen now. And then back to what the student responses look like. You're not going to see an I agree statement on Packback because our AI looks for stuff like that. And if it has one sentence or barely anything, we're actually going to moderate it and let the student know, hey, you need to go back and fix this. So we limit that admin work that's on your shoulders to look after all your students. And so what you're going to see here is these responses are more rooted in their each other's feelings, perspectives, and what they further understood and want to understand about this specific question and topic. And so what we're doing every single week is we're building up this level of relationship and community within your classroom, whether it is in person or online. And I always like to say students learn so much from each other, and this is what's going to be happening in your class every single week. And you can see, again, another example of how students can respond and even using the same source, respond and ask a question in such different ways because we really want to empower them to bring out their own ideas in their own voice. Now, if we hop into some other ways that the professor and students interact is through homework polls. So this is something that Packback also comes with. So each week, students are going to be tasked with asking a question and response. We help do the grading. You know, we sync up with the grade book. Like I said, save you a lot of time there. But something else that the professor can do, and I'm going to have Chelsea chime in with this, is you can interact with your students in a really more meaningful way, such as asking them in-class polls, which are standard issue polls, or what Chelsea's doing here, asking the class a homework poll, aka an open-ended question where students have to select an answer and respond. So before I go any deeper, Chelsea, can you talk us through creating, you know, some of these homework polls, especially this one? How does your class feel about AI, and mention what you told me about why you did part 1 and part 2.
Yeah. So AI is still pretty new, and I discovered, I mean, they were either lying or there were students that really didn't know about AI or hadn't used AI. And so I wanted to give like a temperature check of what students thought about AI. So I first asked them, said, we're going to be using it. How do you feel about it? And then, um, so that was the first response. And then, or the first question. Then I had them look at some slides, I had them watch a video, and I gave them prompts to use to experiment with ChatGPT. And then I re asked the question, how do you feel about AI? And I noticed that there was quite a difference. Um, where a lot of it was indifferent, and then it switched to the majority were excited. And so now I have, or my students are more aware of what AI can do for them. And I'm starting to teach them how we can use AI to assist us or instruct us rather than generate the essays. And I showed them a video that talked about the fears that colleges had or that teachers had. But then I also talked about the benefits of how it can help English language learners, students with disabilities, or students who can't afford one-on-one tutors. And I think they became more open to the idea of using AI as a tool for them.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Chelsea. And Chelsea's, unique way to use polls is one of 1,000 ways to use these homework polls. John and I have faculty that use this as a way to check just simple understanding. I'm going to lecture Monday after class. I'm going to ask my class, a question, 4 answers. I'm going to check and see, is everyone pretty much getting it right? If not, maybe why? Because I have these written responses and I can understand where they're coming from and how they're feeling. So maybe when I come back to class Wednesday, we cover that topic in more depth. Maybe I use it as a way to check in with students. Here are four or 5 concepts we're covering on this midterm final. Which one are you most worried about and why? And now I can utilize the voices of the students from last week and this week to develop my curriculum as a study session. And of course, sitting down with John and I and developing your classroom, we're here to help you utilize these tools effectively and efficiently. And so that's just one of my favorite ways for an instructor to interact with the class in our discussion side of Packback. Now, you're probably all wondering as well, like, okay, you've mentioned AI. How are students using AI in Packback? Well, that's what I want to cover next. And this will cover part of Elsie's question too, about how do we interact with the student and help them with grammar. So when the students go in and ask a question or a response, Packback is first going to give them tips on how to write an academic open question or a response. Next is one of San Jose students' favorite parts of Packback is actually interacting with the AI itself. And so you can see here as a student, I'm going to go in and ask my open-ended question. Next, I'm going to go in and actually add a description. You can see how we describe that. Add context, provide source, provide research, and even provide pieces of media. And so as a student, this is going to be, a one-of-a-kind experience compared to me writing in Canvas. And so as I start typing out adding my context within my question, Packback's going to come in and provide instant feedback and give me that feedback broken down by these 4 C's of good question and response generating. What that looks like is 1, I'm going to get a curiosity score. So this is the threshold that we use to actually grade students. And based on the level of your class and your expectations, we usually set it around a 50 or 60 for freshmen and sometimes a 60, 70, 75 for upper level students. But they have to hit that score higher to get the grade for the week. Now, as a student, I understand in Chelsea's class, I need around a 50, 55. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to follow this type of feedback and I'm going to start at curiosity. What it's doing is it's telling me that, hey, awesome job, some good praise. I've got an open-ended question, but I should go in and add a little bit more detail. to my question so it can spark more of an engaging conversation with my peers. So that's what I'm going to do. As I go in and type that, that bubble is going to fill up. Pieces of feedback are going to fly in and fly out. Next, I want to do some work on credibility. So I want to give, my professor where I got this source from. I can also work on my communication. So maybe add a piece of media to my question, bold and italicize different parts of it. And then finally, convention. So students do not get nicked for spelling and grammar on our discussion platform, because the purpose of our discussion platform is to spark curiosity and help them with their voice. We do, of course, have a grading portion of a writing assignment in our other part of our platform, but we'll get to that in a moment. But what it does look like is I'm able to review specific grammatical errors and fix them. I can also get feedback on things like active versus passive voice and even the use of hedge words. And then, as well as an internal and external plagiarism checker that's running on autopilot, basically. Other thing is when ChatGPT came out, it took us 2 weeks to actually reverse engineer it all and create a AI detection platform too. So we detect for that in discussion boards, and we automatically detect for it in our writing platform as well. But, I can tell you as a student, when I was able to have access to this and actually write, and it's like I'm having a tutor next to me pushing me, to summarize the feedback that we get from San Jose students, basically saying Packback's AI pushed me to further research and better understand topics in my class than I ever before. Hence, I'm taking much more away from my discussion board than I have ever. And so that's how we level up that classroom discussion. And so it's not just that those 5 students that you've got in class that are like, you're really talkative front row students, but instead it's your entire class of 30 or 40 that's going to be discussing at a really high level and again, learning from each other. And so we'll back out of that. And I see a few other comments in here as well. And John, if you want to hit those while I'm talking through deep dives, and then we can kind of reconvene as well. But thank you, Graham, for adding that.
Sure. Yeah. And go ahead.
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to do a quick little answer to Graham's question, because I think you're going to cover it when you go in there with deep dives to show the research assistant.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the benefits of our research assistant that you'll see come in is that we do have, as they enter in differing, whether it's a URL, whether it's a DOI from a journal article, or it's an ISBN from a book, what it will look at is sort of where that source material comes from. And so with a DOI, for example, it'll show, it'll sort of generally explain what impact factor of a journal is. And so like, this is a highly credible journal within the field of XYZ. And it'll say how many times it was cited by another researcher, that sort of thing. When we have a DOI specifically that we can enter in, it'll generate some of those as well. And it will mention that it's peer reviewed versus open source. It also gives, let's say, a quick little disclaimer that if you have a news article, let's say in America, it will mention that news articles or news outlets within America often have at least some sort of bias toward their audience in any way, shape, or form. And so it tends to be able to itemize those and piece those out and prompt the students to think about where they're getting their sources from and how they are choosing to select appropriate or inappropriate resources based on the task. And so that's just a quick little insight, but yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. There's so much we can talk about that we can't get to in what we do, and so I'm very grateful for questions. So thank you so much.
Yep, and I'll show you in real time what that looks like. But yeah, John explained it perfectly. And so what I was doing in the background. So basically, all of your writing assignments as well live within the same umbrella that Packback Questions lives in. It's just in a different tab here. Now, for you, we'll walk you through creating your first writing assignment with a prompt and a specific rubric that's AI assisted graded. But for the sake of time, we're not going to show you that today. I will show you how amazing Chelsea does in terms of making her writing assignments and Packback deep dives. And for folks that do have writing in here, it's a very easy copy and paste. For folks that don't, you get to work with John and I to help develop ways to include writing in your class, because I can tell you, every single discipline we've helped to include writing in there. But what you have access to when you're creating a prompt is basically sharing some expectations, a summary of the writing essay, and then some of your goals that you want the students to try to accomplish. You can also add in questions for them that they need to answer, any sources you want them to use, and then the rubric here is just walking through how to break down and assess different levels of content, and then the AI graded assisted rubric. Chelsea picked 3 of them, but we also do sourcing, citations, and formatting. So either APA, MLA, or Chicago for now. But once that's all said and done, you get that set up. Normally it takes folks about 5 minutes or so to actually transfer over. Students are then able to hop into their assignment and start writing. And so I'm going to go to this super quick example that I actually made with ChatGPT that's talking about the economic pros and cons of deleting student debt. You know, if we had 4 more hours, we could actually walk through this whole problem, but we're not. But we are going to talk about what students actually do in Packback deep dives and the student facing side of it. First, they're going to have research notes. So these are going to be their notes. They're private, just with the student, where they're able to go in and write out as them looking at sources my professor's given me. We're jotting down notes, creating my outline, you know, creating maybe, you know, example thesis statements, maybe, you know, creating my, like, you know, what's my first paragraph going to cover, second, third, and fourth. Just helps them kind of work as they read. Next is to cover Graham's question, what the works cited is. So depending on the formatting that you've set, APA, MLA, and so forth, we're able to do a in-text citation, a citation generate. So all the student has to do is go in and add a source type, URL, DOI, or ISBN, and we're going to save that and generate it. If it's missing anything, then we'll let the student know, hey, the pub date and authors are missing, go find them. And then to visually show you, Graham, what it looks like is every single source that's put in there is going to get checked by our credibility checker. And we're going to let the student know, is that source credible or not, and why? I know a lot of students think New York Post is a credible source because they see it on Twitter, Instagram, all that. But it's, you know, of course, it's not the same as New York Times. And we're going to let them know exactly why. Now, this feature is not in the Packback discussion side yet, but it is going to be, we're planning on bringing it over. So you can think of like things that you see in deep dives or coming over to the discussion side of it. And then the primary part of the Packback deep dive section here is just when the students actually go in and write. And so let's just pretend that I went ahead and typed out my first paragraph. What Packback's going to do is it's going to generate this writing tutor that's powered with AI to help me write my essay. Now, it's not going to write it for me, but what it is going to do is it's going to give me credible feedback line by line as I go through my essay, and it's going to teach me how to write. So 2 things to emphasize here is that students need to write their entire essay in deep dive so they get line by line feedback. And then 2, like I mentioned, we're not going to write for the student, but what we're going to do instead is going to give them feedback based on your technical rubric and let them know what parts of the essay have an error, such as hedge words. And we can see what Packback's doing is it's going to teach me what a hedge word is, kind of give me an idea of it, and give me a suggestion on how to correct it. So it's fundamentally reshaping the way I write. And you can think of this as a chain reaction. You know, my first paragraph has a few errors in it. I learn from those errors from Packback. Then I write a second paragraph that's better than my first, and so forth. And then I'm submitting to my professor much more polished essay than I've ever seen before. What this means as well in terms of equity is that Packback system meets your student where they're at in terms of their writing background. So maybe I came from a private school and I don't have as many errors in my writing. That's okay. Packback's still going to find that. Maybe I came from a public school and I didn't get the best writing education. Packback's going to go in and help me and support me so I can reach that standard of writing quality that San Jose set forth for all classes. A couple other
Mind if
things.
I interject real quick, Hunter?
Yeah, Chelsea, yes, please.
Sure. What I like about this the most is if we compare it to Grammarly, what Grammarly does is it corrects it for the student. So the student will click accept without learning anything about grammar. Also, Grammarly is very formulaic, so it is more like generative AI than it is instruction. So with Packback, it teaches the students how to recognize and it allows them to fix the problem on their own. So they're enhancing their critical thinking skills. And it keeps their voice, as you had mentioned before, John, where that's a huge focus of Packback, where they don't lose that style and that voice that they have.
Yeah, thank you, Kelsey, so much. And you know, as Elsie mentioned, does it comment on like styling? So, you know, if I'm writing, you know, we work with so many different types of papers. So yeah, if there's an example where we're addressing someone's name in a paper, like I work with a few classes that are all business memos. So it's like they're writing up memos for students. Things like that don't get marked because it's within the context of that specific sentence. But when things sometimes do get marked, that's why when it comes to grading the paper, you're able to exactly see why a student got a specific score here. And you can also see examples of all the grammar errors that maybe they missed. And I'm going to zoom out a moment because what's important about this is that yes, we do help technically grade the paper for you so you don't have to deal with all that reading feedback, and we suggest a score to this for you for the student, but you always as the instructor have the final say. And so if you're curious, you know, what grammar pieces they actually missed, you can always check and see what those pieces were. Packback still suggested a 10 out of 10 for the student, but if you don't agree with that, you can give them a 9 out of 10 or vice versa. Now, of course, you know, in the sake of time, there's so much more to get into with deep dives in terms of grading, you know, what happens if there is some plagiarism, but all of that we can always call, you know, cover, you know, on an individual call or so forth. Chelsea, I'd love for you to chat, you know, just chime in and just share your like experience using the grading features in Packback deep dives compared to what it was like kind of doing it pretty much by hand beforehand.
I will say it saves a lot of time because it points out more logistical or mechanical issues, and then I can focus on the content issues. And so my grading has the time I spend grading has shrunk significantly, especially with the discussion posts where they're flagged for me or they're given a curiosity score for me. I can just go through and pick the ones that I want to feature, where I want to show students this is what a great question looks like. And I can spend more of my time designing really cool assignments and less time getting bogged down by all the grading that I used to do.
Yeah. And normally you'll if you look into that white paper that we plugged into the chat, faculty usually surveyed at least to save anywhere from 30 to 50% in time, but they're also being much more satisfied with student writing because all the paper comes to you polished already. And so I have a lot of classes that aren't using AI like Chelsea does, eliminate rough drafts because the professor doesn't need to go in and, you know, all right, we're in a junior level class, but I have to tell you how to outline a paper and how to formulate a paper. Well, they've already gotten that feedback during the writing itself and deep dives. But and I know we're kind of coming up on time. It's 1:02. And so the last thing that we want to cover is just, you know, based on what you learned today, if you're really curious on how you could use AI for good in the spring, you've got two awesome resources here on campus, John and I. And what you all have what you have to do is just basically send us a quick email and let us know like, hey, I'm going to be teaching X number of classes. I'd love to sit down and actually talk about my specific classes. And that's what we do every single day, every week here on campus. So those are our emails down below. Of course, you know, Chelsea's within within this San Jose State University system. So if you ever need, you know, comments or just want to chat with her too, you can always reach out as well. Didn't mean to throw you on the spot, Chelsea, but you are our AI pro on campus. I'll say that for sure.
I put my email in the chat in case anybody does want to reach out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And yes, these are our email addresses. Thank you again, Chelsea, for being a part of this. Thank you all to every single one of you who came in here, who has attended, who's stuck with us this long as well. We are going to be sending along a recording so that you can send it to any colleagues that weren't here. And thank you again to Jennifer, Red, the entire staff. Like we very much appreciate the opportunity to share this because again, we don't buy or sell data, and so this is how we get in front of people, and this is how we sort of get to have these fun discussions about how to integrate AI in a way that not only serves your course outcomes, your course goals, and is mindful of your precious time and resources, but also that helps your students get that sort of coaching that maybe they would miss out on or sort of skip through if given the option to just go straight to generative AI and not to instructional AI. We're happy to chat with you. Thank you all so much. Like I said, we'll be in touch. But if you have any other questions right now, if you do have time to stick around, I can stick around for just a little bit longer and answer some questions. But I am happy to do so. Otherwise, thank you for spending some time with us today. And yeah, I very much appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Yep.
Thank you all. Thanks, LC. Thank you, Graham. Appreciate the questions too. Thank you so much.
Cool beans. All
All
right.
right.
Well, Chelsea, of course. Thank you so much. I've got to hop to another
Yeah.
meeting, but I really appreciate it.